Hello, everybody. How many of you have been here since the first session at noon? Me? Me too. So we made it to the final session of the micro-influencer track here at Digital Hollywood. My name is Tiffany Rivera de Guzman. I'm an event producer, DJ, and productivity consultant, so I help people get things done and stop procrastinating. And I also provide event support for tiny sponsors. So at tiny sponsor events, I'm the tiny person usually holding a clipboard. But today they're having me moderate this panel, which I'm really excited about because once upon a time, I was a college counselor. I'm older than I look. I'm 30 years old. And so I also used to do career counseling. So, in talking about how we can leverage our social media influence for our careers, I'm just really excited for all of you to hear their stories and all of their best practices. So we're going to start with some introductions. So right over here we have Hayley Bright, who just drove here in traffic. And so she is a TV host, comedy actor, and lifestyle expert. And so she has leveraged social media to further her television career. So she's hosted shows on ABC, CBS, NBC, MTV, Sci-Fi, Spike TV, and coming this December on Fox too. And so she started her career hosting shows in gaming and tech. And through social media, she's been able to expand her career into the areas of travel, food, fashion, sports, and relationships. And so next we have Kasha. I might butcher your last name.
There's no last name. You can just call me Kasha.
I'll
I'm
just
kind
call
of
you
like a
Kasha
share.
S. It'll be like Yelp, Kasha S.
No, just Kasha.
So Kasha is a casting director. She actually started her career in the entertainment industry as a child in San Francisco. And part of her story is that her parents weren't, quite stage parents, right? So she actually would submit herself to agencies and pretend to be her mom on the phone in order to get roles. And so she's been doing voice acting, moved down here to LA at age 17. And from there, with acting, hosting, and stand-up comedy, she also wanted to get into the business and creative side. And so now as an influencer with over 40K followers, and she is also a casting director, and she's also known as the casting queen. And so she is known for providing fresh and unique talent in all kinds of different industries, from fashionistas, artists, bloggers, and more. And also she enjoys, in her spare time, holding hands with her cat. Aww. Mm-hmm. Next we have Christy Hang. She is a jet-setting freelance food and travel journalist featured in CNN, Parts Unknown, Eater, MSNBC, and more. She's known for her journalistic viral videos that have hit over 550 million views and counting. She has her master's in broadcast journalism from USC and also a BA from UCLA. And last but not least, we have Marcel Williams, who's a social media manager, creative strategist, and journalist. So Marcel Williams, known as What Up Doe, is a Los Angeles-based social media manager, creative strategist, I said that right, and content creator. And so he's from Detroit, and he was always enamored by the business of hip-hop and entertainment. And so in 2009, he created whatupdoe.com, which is featured on Time and would average over 100,000 unique views per month just by leveraging the power of social media. And so he's been a journalist for 11 years, and he's interviewed everyone from Will Smith to John Boyega, Dame Dash, and Faith Evans, my girl. And these days, so he is a social media manager, creative strategist for Cashmere Agency, and that works on some of the largest Black entertainment properties in television and film. So yes, let's welcome our panelists. It's the last session. Let's get the energy up. And so my first question is for all of you. Describe a day in your professional social media life. So what kinds of things do you do on social media for your career every day or every week? And anyone can start.
I can start. I'll start it off. My day kind of starts where the last one ends. I go to sleep with my phone in my hand, and I wake up with my phone in my hand. I get a lot of flack from my girlfriend for it. But however, being a social media manager, you kind of have to be on top of everything that's going on as it happens. You can't afford to be late. And for Cashmere, I run 3 separate social media accounts across Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So I always have to be on top of everything. So my day starts off aggregating. I'm looking for what the social conversation is at all times, but that's what I do from the moment I wake up to the moment I fall asleep mainly, and I'm really just looking for what the social conversation is, how our clients can fit within that social conversation, or how they should stay away from that social conversation.
Got it. Who's next?
I'll go. So my day-to-day is very different depending on, who my clients I'm working with or what I'm doing at the moment. I'm a freelance TV host as well as journalist, so depending on who I'm working with. So if I'm doing food writing, typically 3 to 4 to 5, 6 restaurants a day that I go to, and I eat at every single one of them, back to back to back.
Yum.
I know, it doesn't look like I do, but it's the skinny ones that eat the most, as I'm sure most of you know. And in addition to that, if I have side clients that I'm hosting a show, it might be a 2 or 3 month stint here or there, or I might be flying in and out with different tourism bureaus that have me going to different places and doing social media and content for them as well. So it's really dependent on who I'm working with at the moment, but I think the most important thing is, and the most constant thing is, I'm constantly creating content and taking pictures and taking notes. And whether I use them today or I save them, I use them 2 or 3 months from now, I always want to have multiple things that I can write about, that I can talk about and post about today, tomorrow, months down the line. So there's never a day where I'm, crap, there's nothing I can talk about, nothing I can post. So I'm very, very prepared all the time.
Thank you.
Piggybacking on that, being prepared all the time, which is very key to being successful, especially in our generation where most of us, I think, can relate to having multiple different titles and different things that we're working on at once. So for me, I'd say that my days start with a lot of list making. If it weren't for lists, I would probably die. So even even if there are a lot of lists, there's also a lot of screaming at my computer, by myself. But as a business owner, every day is a little bit different. Wake up, check the emails, and that's when I start making those lists and checking things off. I get off on checking things off, and just making sure that my clients are always really, really happy. And so some days are going to be, I'm casting, I'm having sessions, I'm bringing people in all day, and some days I get to work on myself a little more and work on my own content. Which is fun when I get to do that. And sometimes I don't wear makeup at all. And then when the day comes that I actually get to wear makeup, you better believe I'm changing outfits 4 times and doing content for a couple days.
There's no better feeling than checking stuff off your list.
Oh, yes.
I feel like we have a little theme going on here.
Hey, girl.
So I'm just going to piggyback off that, which I guess is good because we're saying, hey, we kind of have similar days as social media people. All of my days feel extremely hectic. But they all begin and end with social media. So I found the best time to post is usually in the morning. And then again, when my fans get off work or out of school. And then at night, I'm constantly making content for the next day. In between that, I'm usually on set hosting shows where I'm trying to take more pictures. And I think, as a lot of you guys have said, a lot of the content that we create is evergreen. So if you're checking out a new restaurant, doing something with a hotel, a lot of these things you can keep. So it's not like every day you have to be out there, in full makeup doing cool stuff. But to your fans, you're out there doing cool stuff every day. So it's about just constantly keeping this content that you can pull out of your back pocket.
And I think to add on to that, when we do the jobs that we do, we're essentially playing many different roles. We're our own agent. We're advocating for ourselves constantly. We're the ones that have to make sure that we get paid. And usually there's people who handle all these different facets of your life, but when you're freelance or when you're doing a job that didn't really exist a couple of years ago, you take care of every single aspect of that. And you don't get paid for those hours, and people don't see that, those hours that you put in to get all this work done, to be your own PR person. But unfortunately, that's kind of part of the gig.
Don't forget about accounting and doing your taxes as a freelancer. That's something you have to stay on top of as well.
That's the absolute worst part of it.
The worst.
Yes.
It's a lot of extra work when you're already busy hustling for the next job or working on what you have in front of you at the time.
I think for me, that's one of the areas that isn't talked about enough. Just coming from a journalism background, freelance journalist, I'm used to having to hustle for my paycheck. I'm used to having to email an editor and say, hey, I haven't got that check yet. And that in itself takes so much work, being freelance. that I think that's really overlooked, and it takes a lot of man hours just to get paid.
There's never a day off. When have
No.
you guys had a day off in the past month? Can you remember a day off?
No, I work on sick days.
Yep, exactly.
Right. And before the panel started, as we were chatting, we were joking that we should all just change our taglines to professional hustlers. Because, that's what we do as creatives, entrepreneurs, and influencers. I heard something about the difference between working in your business and working on your business, because sometimes we're handling all the clients and the gigs, but we don't have as much time to put all that great content that we have been collecting to use to build our brands, things like that. Right? And so that's your life now. So I'm a counselor, so we might go a little deep. So think back to your career. What was the first job or gig that you remember getting as a result of your social media presence? And then from there, how did you use what you learned to intentionally increase your online career or your career goals? So the first time you got a job through the internet. Through social media, not like Craigslist.
I think mine was, this is not specifically a job, but I would start going out on auditions, and people, the casting directors and directors, whoever happened to be in the room, would be like, oh my God, we love your Instagram. And then I would get called in for a callback, and they were very familiar with things. They would quote videos that I had taken, or maybe reference a caption, something like that. And that was the first time I was like, whoa, I'm kind of doing something cool here.
Nice. So, back in the 90s, it was about being a household name, right? But now you're just a well-known influencer. That's the new version of being a household name. Okay.
Oh, man. Let's not get that
Almost,
far.
yeah.
But
So my first TV hosting job was hosting a show called Coin Op TV, which was basically a late night show about video games. And at the time, they were like, I guess there weren't that many girls that talked about video games. So I just used that and then started a YouTube account and started playing Sims. And people apparently were that weren't even fans, casting directors were like, oh, we're so glad you came in. We've been watching your Sims videos. And I was like, wait, what? That's amazing. So I booked a lot of work just from taking what I loved and then putting it on YouTube and playing video games or reviewing swag boxes of video game and tech stuff. I think as long as you're constantly putting yourself out there, it's amazing how many casting directors will take note of a stupid video that you made once upon a time. I got a job on a show last year that was a show where we dressed up animals. I'll explain it another time. But anyway, it was a very cool show. And I got that show because some casting director saw my shower with your cat video. They were like, I laughed the whole time. That was so funny that you and your cat were in the shower together.
Please link me.
It really can be anything you put online. People apparently watch.
I'll say I was pretty full of myself when I graduated from grad school. I thought I was the shit. Because I was like, oh, I have a master's. I'm amazing, right? And, I thought it was amazing. And I learned very soon that I was not amazing. And I had this master's in journalism. And I was like, yeah, everyone's going to hire me to be their TV host. Everyone's going to hire me to write these amazing articles. I can't wait. And then I realized basically everything that I sent out, every pilot I shot, everything that I shot didn't go anywhere. And I got gigs here and there, red carpets and shows here and there, but every single person who saw my videos online through Instagram or whatever, Twitter, whatever they used, those were the gigs that I was able to book. Because in essence, that was an online portfolio that they could really tell what your personality was. They could look at your stories and see your personality when you're not technically on for the camera, right? So you have all this at your disposal. So when I was sending all these official links out, all these, great, what I thought were great reels out, and they weren't getting any bites, I was like, what's wrong with me? And then people would start contacting me just through what they saw online, just because they were, Instagram stalking or whatever they were doing. But, it worked out in the end. So you never know who's watching. And I think that's more useful now than trying your hardest to send, your reel out to all these directors who probably aren't even going to look at it.
I would say for me, it was 11 years ago when I first started my journalism career. I went to school for everything but journalism. I went to school for marketing, I went to school for television and radio production, but writing has always been something that's been a passion point of mine. So I started writing on Xanga. I don't know if I'm dating myself by mentioning Xanga, but I started writing on. There's a couple of Xanga loyalists out there, but I started writing on Xanga, and I met a lot of people through Xanga. One of which was Nicole Bitchie, who ran one of the most popular gossip blogs. She became a friend of mine. And another friend that I've met, she was the editor of a men's magazine in Philadelphia. And they both said to me, like, no, you're really good. You should pursue this journalism thing as a career. So I took my writings from Xanga and I kind of made a portfolio, and I've been getting paid for it ever since. So that was my introduction into social media working for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would like to give you 2 e-props for your statement. Anyone remember what e-props are on Xanga? Just us in our 30s or so. All right, cool. And so as you've been sharing, it kind of reminds me of my time editing resumes in my previous life. And so now that you're at where you're at in your success in your career, what are some common, I don't want to call them mistakes, but common areas on other people's social media presence, whether it's Instagram or YouTube or other platforms? And, for our casting directors, for, your clients, what are some tips that you would give to improve their social media presence and some definite no-nos for using social media to try to get jobs or try to land gigs and roles?
I can definitely chime in on that one. Okay, so now we're putting on my casting director hat. Do you see it? Number one thing, please make it easy for me to find you and find you fast. I can't tell you how many people have missed out on cool jobs because things happen so fast in casting. I mean, if you miss a message for a couple hours, you might miss something that you really, really want to do. And so the problem is some people don't put their contact information in their bio. If you don't put your email address in your bio and you don't have an email me button, which both are good. Make it easy. Make me able to contact you as easily as possible. Because if I have to send you a DM and you're not following me, you might not open that follow request because you don't know who @Kasha, which by the way, follow. You don't know who I am. So you don't see that. And that is just the most important thing. Please make it easy for me to find you and find you quickly. And then another thing I would say is make sure your photos actually do reflect what you look like. We all have Facetune. Take out your pimples, do what you have to do, but let's keep it still looking pretty natural because a lot of times people will come in that don't look like their photos, or they just have such edited photos that have that really extreme filter on it that clients don't like that in general. It's not even that you're over edited, it's just that why aren't you posting a real photo? It's just so dated looking and weird. Just make sure your photos look like you because you're wasting your own time showing up at a casting that maybe you weren't quite right for because your photos were so over edited. And, we don't have a ton of time. No one does. And driving in LA sucks. So make it easy for me to find you and make your photos fairly realistic.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would say that authenticity is key. For me, it's very easy for me to look at someone's social media and tell that they're just doing it for the likes or for the hits, because all of the content is all over the place. You may have a meme here, you may have an attempt at a funny video there, and it's very obvious that your presence isn't authentic to who you are. And I think that goes hand in hand when building a real engaging audience. I would say to think about when you guys are on social media, and what do you like to see? And I would say take that and make it your own, but have it be authentic to yourself. Because if it's not authentic to yourself, you're not going to get the engagement. Mm-hmm. It's way too much competition.
Mm-hmm. I would say sitting on the other side of casting and casting certain projects for web, the biggest thing I've noticed is some people have a really bubbly, fun online presence, or whatever it is that you're reflecting. They've walked in the room and been a totally different person. Now that's fine. Sometimes we're all a little bigger, a little different on social media. Just make sure you walk in the room and reflect that exact same person that I'm seeing on your social account. Because that is, I feel like I'm already checked out if you're not. That's unfortunate, so just make sure you do that.
I totally agree with what everyone here just said. So in addition to what everyone just said, I think that when people are just getting started, they have a tendency to overpost. They want to show, I'm so exciting, that they, today I did 10 different things. So I have 10 different posts to show you. I'm so cool. Look at me. And I think they need to calm down. Also learn, what are the best times to post. Learn your brand, who's following you, who your audience is. But I also think at the same time, my biggest pet peeve, or something that I think people really need to acknowledge in social media, is that I don't necessarily believe that having the most followers is most important to any brand, because it's so easy to buy likes, to buy followers. What does that really mean with also Facebook and Instagram, their algorithms changing? Your likes can go way down. For me, I really believe in the power of the micro-influencer. You can be really big and have like 2 million followers, but if you go to a restaurant, if you go to a hotel, do those 2 million people really care what you're doing, or do they just want to look at you and how cute you look? Versus if you have someone who's really influential in their group of 2,000 people, they might really think, oh wow, I feel like I know this person. I take the recommendations seriously. I'm going to go stay there. I'm going to go order that. I think for a business or as other influencers, I think that is much more important to me, that you're bringing in true audience that really matters. So I'll take 2,000 over 1 million any day.
I like that it's all about the authenticity, consistency, and in essence, keeping it real, right? And so for our casting directors, my question is, what are some good examples of types of posts or content strategy that your clients have used to successfully land gigs and roles?
Sure. I think there's so many different kinds of influencers. There's so many different kinds of personalities. There's so many different kinds of jobs. So I don't think that there are any particular types that work. I think it's all about just finding yourself, knowing exactly who you are, what your brand is, how you look every day, what your personality is, what your opinions are. I think having a really, really clear view of yourself and your opinions, and having a personality. Like, there are so many people that post like, oh my God, I wore this today. What did you wear today? And it's like, okay, it's a good way to get people to engage, but what does it say about you? Like, for me, I like to add things. So I come from a comedy background. I did a lot of stand-up comedy, and I love, I do a lot of really embarrassing things. And so I like to incorporate that in my caption so people see my personality. They see that I'm more than just like this picture. They see my like weird little world. Like, for instance, I'm very curvy, and so buttons and zippers are my worst enemy. So one time I got stuck in a dress and my boyfriend had to help me out of it. I was stuck in it until he came home from work. So I'm gonna tell everyone that. I'm not gonna hold that back. That's such a great story, and people love people that they can actually relate to. So it's all about just finding your voice, putting it out there, and showing people that you're more than just that.
Thank you. How about you, Hayley? Examples of clients, or even what you've done or what you've seen others do that leads to career success on social media?
Well, I think this is pretty generic in a way, but I think the biggest thing right now is video. So, we all tend to post mostly photos, especially on Instagram. But I think for people to be able to see you and hear you and feel your energy is the biggest thing from a casting point of view, because they're more than likely casting you not in a print ad, probably in a movie or a TV show or something like that. So I think the more and more video you can put out is really the best thing you can do.
I absolutely agree with that, because there are so many times, from, again, putting on my casting director hat, when we get submissions on projects, there are, depending on what it is, I might get 3,000, 5,000, 6,000, I might get 8,000 submissions on a project for something that only has a couple of roles. So if you want to work as talent in the business, you need to just have every tool possible going for you. So have a great Instagram. It doesn't have to be you don't have to have 1 million followers necessarily, but just put something together and make it so that when I go to your Instagram, I can see who you are, and I can see you talk, and I can see what your personality is like, all right there in that little package. It's awesome when someone has that.
And I would say don't be afraid to brag about yourself a little bit. I kind of was for a while. I was like, why would I put this show I just worked on my Instagram? Because I sort of started my Instagram as a side project, really, in the beginning. I started it so I could talk about travel and food and stuff outside of gaming, which is what I was hosting at the time. So it was almost like my little baby escape. But what I realized after a while is, you kind of do have to put the stuff you're working on there, because that's what the casting directors are coming to your page for. So if you're speaking on a panel, maybe throw a picture up. If, you just worked on a show, put a little clip on your Instagram. It's really helpful. I
Brag
think,
away.
as casting, to see, you're like, ooh, that person's working outside of their Instagram. That's awesome. I don't know, it kind of gives you a little extra cred.
And the followers love to see that too. Like, people
Yeah.
want to see you working. They get excited. They're like, oh, that's so cool. Can you tell us when it comes out? Can you put a link up?
Yeah, because they feel like your friends. So I've noticed once I started doing that, they were like, my friend Hayley has a show on television. Because they only knew me from, Instagram. So yeah, it's kind of fun for them too.
So it is good to shout yourself out from time to time, right? Especially if you're trying to use this for your career.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then next I have a question for Christy. So I know we have a lot of fellow hustlers in the room, a lot of dreamers, right? And so I know that as part of your job, you get to travel for work and get paid to travel. And I think a lot of us, even outside of this industry, would love to just work from anywhere, from like an island or the mountains or something like that, right? And so for someone who wants to change up their lifestyle and start traveling for work, what advice would you give them for using social media to be able to be paid to travel to work?
Well, I think the number one most important thing is you have to be a good writer. I think nothing else matters if you aren't a good writer. And that means, I guess, in this case, writing good captions. If you're writing articles, writing strong, concise articles, showing that you're intelligent and not writing in emoji speak like the kids these days are. I think once you're able to do that, and if you're able to attract these tourism boards to fly you out to places, then you have to think of, there's so many people that want to do this job. How are you lending a different voice than all these people that have already done it? I just came back from Hawaii a couple days ago. I'm still actually jet lagged. But what do I bring to the picture? What is my voice going to say that other people haven't done yet? Am I shooting a video that other people haven't done before? Am I interviewing some of the locals that other people haven't talked to before? Or am I going down a list that every travel channel, every other place has already done? I want to create better content for people, things that aren't generic. I want to go to all the mom and pop shops, all the places that have C ratings that are dirty. Those are the places that I want to go to. And that's not for everyone, but that's what I like to do. But once in a while, I like to glam it up and do an all luxurious trip. I'm not one to complain if you want to put me up the Four Seasons, which has happened before on my other trip to Hawaii before. So my whole brand is I'll do anything. I've eaten bugs, I've eaten lion meat. I will do anything at least twice. But what makes me different from everyone else? And that's probably it. That I'm just kind of weird like that, right? So I think that's my saving grace, and that's what makes these people keep calling me back to host me and give me free trips to places, which I really don't mind.
Got it. So we've talked about shouting yourself out and standing out in your uniqueness, and putting your voice out there in both of those things. And then, did anyone want to add anything to that? Do any of you all get to travel for work? Can I come?
Seriously.
I travel for work quite a bit, but I would agree exactly with what you said. Yeah.
Got it. And now I have a question for Marcel. So your roster of people that you've interviewed through your journalism career is quite impressive. Everyone from Will Smith to Faith Evans, and I love 90s R&B, so I want to meet. That's so awesome. I'm so excited that happened for you. So what was the process of that like? Like, what do you think are not just the logistical steps that got to being able to interview Will Smith, but like your process and your journey that led up to that moment? What do you think is, what advice would you give people? Because I know we might have people who have podcasts or video where they want to interview people. What's the best way to be able to increase your interview roster for celebrities or other influencers?
I would say, first off, having a strong writing background is really good. Just like my counterpart here said, if you can't write, you can't speak. You can't tell a story if you can't write it down. So having that fundamental part of the game is very key, I think. And just go out there and do it. I started off just interviewing different artists that I knew at home in Detroit. And I was known as the guy who was at every event. I talked to every artist. I shook every hand. I ask the questions that they've never been asked before. And for me, my personal brand is I'm very brash. If you follow me on social media, that's my brand. I'm 100% honest. I like to say, I don't want to say keep it real because it's cliche, but that's what I do, and I don't hold any punches. So if you've done something and I'm interviewing you, I'm going to ask you about it very bluntly. And fans love that, or they either hate it. It's very polarizing. So I've been able to develop my voice into that over the past 11 years. So I'm able to take that special brand to different outlets and say, hey, I can bring attention, to my own work, my writing, via my personality, via the way that I conduct myself on social media. I use an example. When I first started writing for Hip Hop DX a couple of years ago, my first assignment was an album review for an underground artist in New York, based out of New York. And the album wasn't that good. And I wrote that in so many words, and it then turned into a 5-day Twitter beef.
Oh dear.
And that in turn got that review over 50,000 hits on a nobody. So those are the type of things that I like to incorporate. Like, I'm going to be honest in everything that I do. That's the only way that I know how to do it. So that would be my advice, is just hone in on your voice, always be honest, and really practice your writing. Like, you have to practice it. You have to practice your writing. If you want to be able to get in the room and interview these type of people, because they will spot you out from a mile away, and you don't want to be embarrassed in an interview like that.
So I really like that we talked about how video is really important, but also having your copywriting game on lock too, right? Just the captions and everything else, your blogs, those all matter too. And I really love what you said about in everything that you write and put out there, being honest. And, the A word for today was authenticity, which I'm sure you've all heard like 12 times today. But to add to that, it's, having integrity in your content and integrity in your writing, so... Okay, so in terms...
I would just also add, just do it. There's nothing holding you back from doing it but you. If you have a friend who's an artist and you want to get into music journalism, interview him. Put it up on your Facebook. Just write it as a Facebook status. But you have to. It's a muscle, and you have to exercise it.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the podcasts that I listened to on minimalism, he really wants to get The Rock on his podcast. And so he's been doing this thing where he even has a website called Get The Rock on Matt's Podcast, and even went to the extent of doing a jingle submission contest for his listeners. So people from all around the world submitted jingles like, bring The Rock to my podcast. So yeah, you're right, just doing it, deciding what you want to do with your career or that goal, and then just going for it, because as creatives, entrepreneurs, we have all these ideas in our head, but if they're in their head, then no one's going to see them and no one's going to know. And if you don't communicate what you want, how will they know to give it to you, right? And so, as we can see, the four of you have, had such amazing career journeys so far. But looking to the future, what are your long-term goals for specifically using social media to, branch out even further your reach, or even enter different industries? What are your thoughts on that? So your long-term goals.
For me, I would say that my long-term goals are to just take my own advice and just do it. So I'm working on developing my own long-form video content. I have a couple of shows in mind that I'm going to be working on really soon, and so and just creating for myself. I've had the privilege of working for a lot of different people. I want to put that practice into myself. I can't expect anyone else to put that energy into me if I'm not doing it myself. So that's my next step.
I'm currently in the process of writing 3 shows for television, and I want to have all of those have a social media presence in each show. So my next goal is kind of to branch out of the stuff I'm doing for myself and partner with larger companies to have my voice on a bigger platform with them.
Okay.
Well, I guess for me, I want to cast all the films at Sundance. I love I'm kind of known for casting, obviously in the traditional ways as well, but also having talent that I find, because I kind of go places where there are sort of like new faces and people that aren't necessarily agency represented yet or whatever. So I love bringing like genuine, authentic people that maybe are kind of untapped and bring them to the screen. So I'd love to work on more projects like that. And then for myself, I really realized I love food, and I want to host a couple of food-based shows. I've been working on putting together some pitches for that, and I also am writing a pilot, a comedy. So, you know, we're all just doing our things, right?
I think for me, I hit my highlight for this year, career-wise, would be doing Bourdain's show, one of his last shows for Parts Unknown. So to piggyback off that, I think I really want to continue hosting more food and travel shows, whether it's on social media or whether it's, you know, on TV or Netflix or DirecTV or whatever it may be. But also, I think in the somewhat near future, I'd love to open up some sort of cafe with my name and kind of really create the menu and do everything myself. I think that would go hand in hand. I can run the social media account, and I think that'd be a great putting it into the future, putting it into the universe. So I think that's my next step.
I'm really excited for all of you. And then for people in the audience, what I would love for you all to share with them is, you know, we talked a lot about, you know, just doing it, shouting yourself out, making yourself stand out, even more like technical things like making sure you have that email button, things like that. If everyone who's in this room who wants to use social media to further their career or get a job, if they were to do one thing when they got home, or I mean, they could even do it in the next 30 seconds because we all have our phones, but if there's one thing that they need to make sure that they're doing, if they aren't already, what would you say that is? Just the one most important thing to you.
I would say update your LinkedIn account. I cannot tell you guys how many jobs I got just from updating my LinkedIn. I was like, holy shit, people actually check LinkedIn, and they hire you off of LinkedIn.
Wow.
So I would go home and update your LinkedIn and add a bunch of, you know, if you create video content, add in little links to your video content on there so it's fun to watch and people can engage with your page more. I used to think LinkedIn was super old school, but I'm glad I updated it a couple years ago, so I do that.
Yeah, definitely. One of the panelists from the first session, Winnie's son, she is a financial advisor, and she mostly does her show on LinkedIn, so there's even video capability on LinkedIn.
What?
There is.
What?
That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Well, thank you for
She's very active on
this
Twitter. You
panel
can find her.
See you on LinkedIn.
Yes.
I would say engage. Yeah, I don't think any of us really talked about engagement, but that also shows your authenticity. And I meet a lot of really awesome people on the internet, and I wouldn't do that without engaging. So not being shy to reach out if you think someone seems like someone you want to know, someone cool, someone interesting, someone maybe you could work on something together, or even just be friends.
And like, in what way do you reach out? Do you like slide into their DMs or email them or find their agent? Like, what's one of the best
whatever
ways?
it takes. I mean, whatever kind of contact information they have up, just depending on who the person is. I totally like cold call people, whether it's a potential client or someone that I think is really interesting that I want to put in something eventually. You know, just kind of reach out and be like, hey, I thought your stuff was really cool. Like, I just want to know you. Hey, how are you? And just start building a relationship. Just don't be afraid to make some new contacts, make some new friends, meet some new people. Just open up your circle.
I love it. Next.
Gosh, I agree with the ones you guys already said. I guess in addition to those ones, a good profile picture. I think one, it has to look like yourself, but two, it needs to be professional. I don't care if you're a comedian or not. Like, it needs to be a professional picture. I don't want you doing an upside down keg stand with your sorority sisters or frat bros or whatever that is. If that's the case and that's how you want to live your life, go for it, but that needs to be a private account. If you want people to find you publicly, everything you put online is being judged. Someone's looking at it, and you're trying to use this to your advantage to get a job. So put your best foot or face forward and make sure you look professional, even if that means, you know, making a good profile picture. If you're a comedian, make it funny, but don't make it unprofessional. That would be the worst turnoff. That's the first thing people see when they go to your account.
What if you shoot the keg stand with a DSLR?
Oh, okay. That's
lighting
true, very
kit.
true. You win. But for the most part, It's very hard to make a keg stand look professional, but if you're able to, then go for it. And if it's part of your brand, it's on brand, go for it. But for the most part, I will say doing a really good, not necessarily a model picture, but a really good like passport photo, but like not looking like, it's a mugshot.
Yeah.
Just it needs to look like you. Don't Photoshop the hell out of your face. Show us your flaws. That is what people look like, and that's what other people expect you to look like.
I mean, you can leave, you can get rid of some flaws.
A couple pimples. Is all
Don't
good.
worry. I'm not saying don't Photoshop your photos.
Just don't Facetune it. We're good.
Don't do the rub all over the face thing. Like, what is
That's
that? Where you don't have
so
pores
annoying.
anymore? I'm like, who are these people with no pores? Sign me up.
Look like their faces are floating.
It's all kinds of weird stuff.
For me, I agree. I definitely agree with what they said. But for me, I would take it back a little bit further than that. I would say to really learn what your brand is and what you want to do first. Before you continue on posting, I really figure out what your lane is. Because by 2020, influencer marketing is going to be worth $5 to $10 billion. And if that's something that you want to be a part of, you really need to know your lane and own your lane. So I think it really starts there.
All right, so be strategic, be professional, but still shine your personality, engage, use LinkedIn and all the platforms and make sure they're all on point. So now we have time for a few questions. I'm usually the one holding the "you have 2 minutes left" and time up sign, so we can go till 8 p.m. No, I was kidding, but I would love to take questions. Okay, I saw this hand first over here. Yes. So the question, I'll repeat it in case people couldn't hear. So the question was, so she's a stand-up stage comedian, so sometimes posts videos about what she does, but she's also into things like DIY and cooking and travel. So the question for the panelists is, should that be incorporated in her professional stand-up comedy profiles, and if so, how is the best way to integrate that?
Okay, what's your personality like as a stand-up comic? Like, who are you as a comic? Okay, so bring that to your DIY. Make sure everything keeps that personality. And yeah, if you want to do like DIY while you like talk shit or whatever, like that could be really fun. Maybe it's like you doing that stuff while you're just like blah, blah, blah. I went on a date, or however you can actually incorporate them so you really have like a tight thread going and you keep that personality up. Like that could be really fun.
I totally
yeah.
agree with you. And I think it can be all in the same profile. Because ultimately you're selling you. So people are coming to your page being like, oh my gosh, I love this girl. She's so funny. And then when they find all that other content, I think it's a value add.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make. It's like, oh, I do comedy. Oh, I do this. So let me make completely separate accounts for it. And you're divesting your own audience into multiple avenues. You may have your comedy page popping, but your DIY and your food pages are in the toilet because you're only one person. You can't invest 100% of time into 5 different platforms. And she said, at the end of the day, you are the product. And what you're selling is yourself. So, and you're selling yourself via your comedy, via your DIY, via your food blog. So that put all that in one place. Yep.
Okay, over here. So the question for those who couldn't hear is, so as a journalist, obviously you're writing, but what are other ways that like either brands or companies are asking you to do writing as part of your social media career? That's the question? Okay.
So for me, social media has opened the door for me to write. Like currently, I write for Billboard, I write for Vibe, and without my social media presence, I would have never had those opportunities. Social media, I would say, picture it as one giant party, and you may be an introvert, but on social media, you can be whoever you want. That's a gift and a curse. But you can be an introvert in real life, but on social media that allows you to be the vibrant person, to shake every digital hand, to kiss every digital baby. And it's a real networking tool. I've met so many connections just via my social media profiles. I've been able to interview a lot of people just knowing them from social media. My current job that I have now it's all connections, it's all networks. Like the person who told me about my current position now, I met them 8 years ago on Twitter. So all of these things play into your career, and you just have to play the long game. You have to think about those things. So I would definitely say use social media to put yourself in the conversations. And even as a journalist, if let's say Vogue is following you, or someone from Vogue comes across your page and is like, hey, this person, she seems like a subject matter expert. We're going to give her a chance to write the story. I have a friend who's a editor at Vibe, and he gets international stories because people follow him and they know what his subject matter, the expert, what he's an expert in, and he gets so many opportunities just off of social media.
And to add on to that, there are so many mega influencers that are so pretty, but they really can't write. And it's very apparent. And I get so many jobs through Instagram, through LinkedIn, through Twitter. And they're like, wow, you can actually, use your words. You can actually write. Like, that's amazing. So I write, I actually do work for CNN. I work for Eater. I work for LA Weekly. I do all these actual journalistic stories that are kind of separate from my social media, but if it weren't for my social media, they wouldn't have been able to find me. If I had tried to apply to CNN, apply to Eater through their little portal and insert all my information, no one would call me, and it's happened before. But once they see me online, I'm in the conversation, and they're like, oh, plus you can write, you're in right away. They don't even want to look at my resume because they know that I can do that. So it definitely goes hand in hand.
Do you put all those writing samples on like a website so people can find them in one place?
I do, most of them, but yeah, LinkedIn is really good for that as well. Really great portfolio. I think I'm going to go home and update my LinkedIn after you.
Definitely.
And then we'll make LinkedIn shows together.
And just to add to that, like I add all of my articles that I write for Billboard and Vibe, I put them right on my Instagram stories, my Instagram highlights. So you can swipe up and click on all of them for right there. You can come to my page and see everything that I've done for Billboard, everything I've done for Vibe. And I put them in the stories. I share them on Twitter. I share them on Facebook. I share them on LinkedIn. You have to, as a writer, you have to promote yourself. Or otherwise, because the name of the game is clicks. And if you aren't getting the clicks, then your pay rate isn't going to be there.
And I think on Instagram, aside from swiping up from a story, I don't know if you heard of like a link tree. So if you click on the link, instead of only being limited to one link in your bio, it'll link to other things, whether it's like your recent things you're selling or the recent things you've written or been in. Okay, so we had a question over here.
Oh, wait, I have one more thing to
yes,
add.
Go ahead.
Even if you're not a writer, your copy is part of your post, honey.
Absolutely.
Every
Your copy is part of your
caption,
post. And you could post a cool picture like of you and your dog and you have a great outfit and you look nice, but the only things that people are really going to say are like, oh, cool dog, nice outfit. But if you have some great copy in there or something interesting to say, you're inviting your followers to engage in a whole nother conversation, which is A, learning more about you, B, learning more about them, and C, I don't have a C, but but your copy is part of your post.
C is when
Very important.
C would be when in doubt, just use a Drake lyric.
Yeah.
I mean, but everyone uses the Drake lyric. Like, it's gonna do well.
you gotta
but
stand out, remember?
I'm tired of the Drake lyric. I will say that.
Okay,
And I
we
know this is
have
gonna live here forever, but
We have time for like 2 more kind of quick fire style questions. So over here, and then I'll choose the last person. So the question was on Instagram, aside from just linking to articles, especially if you haven't written articles yet, how do you show people that see your account that you can write and you're a good writer and they could hire you to write things?
For me, I think people get bored very quickly, so I'm not one to post very, very long captions, but I make it very apparent in my stories and also my captions, like, oh, my latest article is up and it's definitely going to be my first link up there. And every single time I have a new article, I pretty much have a new article out every week. I'll say, oh, click it up, by the way, new article in my stories, swipe up. I'm always linking back to it, and on the bottom of it, check URL in profile. So I'm always telling people that and reminding them that I write. I'm taking a screenshot of the article, putting it into all the social media as well, so people see that name, CNN, like, oh, she's not just, a ditz, whatever it may be from what you think of me just from seeing a picture.
Yeah, on Instagram, I just simply screenshot the article and link tree it directly to the article. I'll put the link in my bio. On Twitter and Facebook, I'll simply just post the link and some copies. So it's also about knowing the different platforms. So Facebook, you can get away with long form posts. Instagram, nobody wants to read all that. So you have to be quick, you have to be succinct and get to the point. And Twitter is just kind of in the middle. So it just depends on what your engagement is.
Okay, so I have time for one more question. So I'll have the person in the second row and the third row rock, paper, scissors. So you want rock, paper, scissors, or does one person just want to go? Okay. Oh, that's kind. Okay, and also after the panel, since this is the last one and probably no one wants to drive home in traffic, you could probably talk to them after too. So, but go ahead.
Hosting specifically is very interesting because basically to get a great hosting job, they sometimes come to you, but it's your responsibility to create the content and so say you are you're really into relationships and you're like, you know what, I want to host a show on relationships, then you better have that on your Instagram and you better have a blog or a vlog or whatever it is to show that, and then you're like, hey, I'm a relationship expert. And then next thing you know, someone who's looking for that will find you. And if you have the stuff to back it up, they'll make you an expert. That's what it is. And honestly, for hosting, followers are sadly very important. Wouldn't you agree? The
Very
hosting
important.
world specifically is very follower based. So just work on your content, make stuff. For whatever you want to host, make it. Make it yourself, and honestly for that, they will come.
And come they will. So thank you all for being here. So we'll be back tomorrow for more workshops, more panels. And so let's give them a hand. Thank you so much for everything you shared. Thank you all for being here and staying till the end. They could take your questions. Well, I don't have to change all these cards out for the next panel, so you could take the questions in here. So thank you for being with us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, so are we getting pictures of each other sitting at the table with our